Everyone, welcome to episode 593 of the My 123 Cents podcast. I am your host, Kevin Huntsberger, joined once again this week by Chad Smart. Chad, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing all right. And I just dawned on me when you said 593 that you realize you're over 200 episodes behind The Simpsons.
I gotta speed things up, I guess, right?
Yeah, I guess so. So maybe in 3 years, 4 years, you'll catch up to
Maybe. Well, they got to stop first, I think.
them.
So we're going to be talking women's wrestling and WrestleMania specifically. But before we get to that, if folks are watching, you may notice you're wearing a Tony Storm t-shirt. Did you get that at your most recent AEW adventure, or was that one of the WrestleCon?
No, I don't buy merchandise at shows.
Ah,
No, this came in one of the either probably one of the AWA crate, AEW crate. Wow, I have no idea what promotion we're.
oh,
She's timeless. She's
yeah,
timeless. She's been wrestling for ages.
could have been in the AWA, I guess.
Yes, I no, I was trying to think of which shirt to wear this week, and Tony is out for some reason. No one knows why. Although she was just at the big event con or whatever it's called in New York. Our friend of ours was there and sent me a picture of him with Tony, and but he didn't say anything about if anything was discussed with her or anything. So I figure since no one knows what's going on, and it was on top of the pile of shirts in my closet, I would wear a Tony Storm shirt.
What do you think about mysteries in wrestling? And this could be a whole nother topic one day, but obviously this is going to play out into a mystery. We saw it with Jade Cargill a couple, year and a half or so ago with
Mm.
Naomi. We've seen it with the masked men in WWE with Austin Theory, and then I guess Seth Rollins is now the latest masked mystery man. Uh, do you like a good mystery? Because we never, sometimes it doesn't work and we don't get that closure. For example, I don't think we ever really found out who was pulling that briefcase up when Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon wrestled Stone Cold at King of the Ring back in what, 99 or 2000, whatever year that was.
98, I think.
Was it
98,
98?
99, 98, 99, somewhere around there.
So in that era, and then of course we had the white Hummer crash in WCW that I don't think ever really officially got closure on either who crashed into Kevin
Yeah.
Nash. I think it was the victim in that circumstance. So
Mm. Um, yes, wrestling and mysteries go together about as well as things that don't go well together.
wrestling weddings.
I was gonna say wrestling and logic. So,
Yes, yes.
um, you know, although I know you were there live for it, I still think it wasn't as bad as it gets made out to be. The Black Scorpion mystery,
Oh,
I think, had some potential, but and this is where with the Tony Storm case is if they know who's going to be the attacker
mhm.
and they can build up to that, then hopefully it'll be well.
Yeah.
Good storyline. If they don't and they just make it up week to week, then it's going to be a problem. But I think, if done well, this is a good chance for AEW's women division because Tony has been the focus for pretty much the last 2 years, year and a half at least. And if she's gone for, the next 6, 7 months, it gives someone else a chance possibly to step up and become the front runner leader for the division. So, and hopefully the Bella twins don't have a long-term contract with WWE, so they can come in and it was all a ruse. They would have gotten away with it.
So speaking of Tony Storm, and she's someone that I think not only, was she kind of the face of the women's division, I think some would argue she was one of AEW's top faces. And when I say face, I don't mean a good guy, but I'm
Mm.
talking like representation of, when you name your favorite AEW stars. And I
Yeah.
think we've entered into an era now where even though we still say women's champion, women's intercontinental champion, women's Royal Rumble,
Mm.
whatever the championship may be, we still identify it as the women's. But I feel like over the last decade, and that's really going to kind of be the crux of this week's episode, is talking about WrestleMania specifically. But Tony Storm is in the conversation, I think, amongst the wrestling greats of AEW, not just relegated to the women's division. Is that fair to say? You watch obviously more AEW than I do, but just
Mm,
the social media perception of a casual fan, like I would say I'm a casual fan of AEW, uh,
yeah.
is that such that Tony Storm, she's in that first wave of big rubber guys or big rubber girls from Collect Major,
Mhm.
of the first four stars that they did from AEW, Tony Storm is in that set. So I think that says something.
No, I would agree. When AEW first, in their first, I don't know, 3 years, let's say, they promoted the four pillars, which were MJF, Sammy Guevara, uh, Darby Allin, and Jack Perry. And then they added Britt Baker as like the fifth at some point. And I would say now, if you look at AEW, if you take those pillars, Tony Storm and MJF are really the top two young pillars of AEW. So, um, yeah, I think she, you know, it, it's interesting because she was in WWF and then just kind of, I believe, just kind of walked out
Yeah.
one weekend and said, okay, I'm done with this. And then showed up in AEW, has gone through a character change, obviously. And that's, we've said it here before. I don't like when wrestlers that weren't overly popular in one promotion then become popular in another. And the people are like, oh, the previous promotion dropped the ball and they didn't. And it's like, not necessarily, because it's character work, and that character would not have developed in the other promotion because it came about because of things that were going on. Hopefully that all made sense. Um so I think Tony, for whatever reason, if it was Tony Khan's realization that he could do the Hollywood storyline with Tony and Mariah May, or if it was RJ City who connected the pieces better, whatever it was, it worked. And I think it's because it's a character that is not uh it's a more unique character in wrestling, if that,
Yeah,
and
in a business where it seems like we get a lot of the same, or because I do think it's fair to say, and I have very faint memories of Tony Storm in WWE, but she was
mhm,
more of that cookie cutter, um, you know. I feel like she almost kind of, and help me if I'm wrong here, but she kind of had that Bella Twins look of the attire and
mhm,
kind of that uh, you know, they were still focused more on uh, style than substance. It was more of a she was the eye candy, I guess, for
yeah.
lack of a better word. And I do feel like, and again, like you said, I agree. I don't think you can necessarily. It's the creative, and sometimes it does require leaving and going to another company, another promotion, and in some cases another country, and finding that identity. And I think that of all of the jumps, if you will, I would find it hard to argue that is not the most successful jump from WWE to AEW for someone.
Mhm,
I mean, she transcended the women's division there, and I do
yeah.
think that I'm curious though, how long can this incarnation of her and like you said, taking this time off maybe good
Mhm,
for the character as well, to give it a rest and give it a break and
mhm,
a breather and let some other women come in and develop those skills for those women and then bring her back into this mix, and you don't
yeah.
really necessarily have to change the character per se.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would just say, you can still go back. I believe there's still on YouTube the Hey EW interview series that AEW did. There's an interview with Tony Storm before she became timeless. And
Did she come in
um,
as she didn't come in as timeless then?
no,
Okay, see, I
no,
thought I thought that was a whole okay. That's
no.
interesting.
She When she came in, she's still doing kind of the same gimmick that she had in WWE, where it's kind of just a rock star type attitude and just kind of I don't necessarily say happy to be here type character, but yeah, there wasn't a lot of depth to that
Mhm.
character.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, my memory with wrestling and how things change is so bad. I don't remember exactly how Timeless started.
Okay.
So if AEW were wise, they would put together a little recap video package and put it on YouTube for newer fans to see.
Could you see her, because yeah, Cody Rhodes, obviously, kind of tongue in cheek. I'm saying this next one with Andrade, but we have seen stars go from WWE to AEW and then, back to
Mhm.
WWE. And we've seen some that have just gone, Royce Keys notwithstanding, but, Jade
Who?
Cargill, Saint, um, there have been Ethan Page, some of those guys and women have jumped from AEW to WWE, and for the most part kept their names have changed, but maybe the characters are still the same.
Yeah.
Could you see a time? And I know that when she left, I think it was kind of on, like you said, she just kind of quit. I don't think she necessarily had the greatest relationship, but that was under a different regime. Could you see timeless Tony Storm in WWE at some point in the future?
Only if she owns the gimmick.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't think she could take that character, but it would be interesting to see if she could do something, you know, similar to how the big boss man became the boss or
Yeah.
the guardian angel, or Earthquake became the shark. They're so similar in gimmicks that you.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see that on a grander stage. It was kind of like Gold Dust leaving and being, what was he, Black Rain in
Black
TNA,
Rain.
Seven
Yeah.
for a minute in WCW. But I feel like Dustin Rhodes, still dresses and maybe not acts like Gold Dust, but he still wears the face paint, which
Mhm.
Dustin Rhodes, the natural, never did that. But
Yeah.
it is interesting that the personality, the difference that change can make of a wrestler's personality of getting that different gimmick, and the fans obviously have to buy in and get behind it as well.
Yeah, Dustin is a interesting one because I mean he's a talented wrestler. I mean he's been around for 5 decades, so he can't dispute the longevity of the career. But it's interesting how as Gold Dust, there's a lot of character, and granted, it is a character, so there's more character work
Yeah,
than just as Dustin, but it's not so much character work. I guess what I'm trying to say, it's the charisma factor. Like Gold Dust is just very charismatic, whereas I find Dustin to be kind of just there.
yeah.
It's and again, he could work the exact same match, but there's just something missing when it's just Dustin, when it's just Cowboy. You know.
Yeah, and I would say, gosh, I'm trying to think of other instances of that.
Mhm.
I almost feel like, to an extent, and I guess I wasn't paying as close attention, but like Stardust with Cody,
Mhm.
I, you know, and this, I'm probably going to get some hate for this. Me, Cody is just kind of there. He definitely, and I don't like comparing, but okay, let's compare. Dusty Rhodes, Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dusty is the charisma and still to me the bigger star, even though Cody
Yeah.
has been the multi-time WWE champion. But Randy Orton, Bob Orton, I think in this case it's Randy has the
Mhm.
charisma, has the style, has the longevity for Christ's sakes, he's been there 20 plus years. But
Mhm.
putting them in the ring against each other and I just I find, and back in the day we were both kind of, I think you still are kind of a no-go on Randy. I'm actually pulling for Randy to win at WrestleMania just because I feel like he's gone through that change as well of being these different incarnations of the Viper, and we're back now I think to probably '09,
Oh, nine is what they're saying. Yeah.
the bald, badass that just doesn't give a shit. And so, and Cody to me is still just kind of that. He, tr- it's I don't know. I don't want to say he's
I know what you're trying to say, and I don't know how to say exactly either. But it's just it to me, he tries too hard. It's
Yes.
like I am the face of the company. I am the good guy. I am what you should be cheering.
Yeah.
But again, I've said it many times on this show. To me, since he's come back to WWE, there's just nothing there other than, hey, look, it's Cody. And Cody's, the guy that you should all like. So I think WrestleMania, obviously the best outcome for that match is it ends in a dusty finish with Ted DiBiase Jr. coming out and becoming champion.
And I was going to get to him in just a second too, but like, do you think with Cody, you know, he is all corporate in his appearance? It's always the suit, and he's always dressed to the nines. And Dusty was just blue jeans, t-shirt, cowboy hat, cowboy boots. You know,
Don't forget the fur coat.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he was ready to kick ass. And with Cody, and not just because listen, the man wrestled the Hell in a Cell with the torn pec, and you could visibly see. I'm not questioning his
Toughness is,
fortitude or his manliness, his toughness, anything by that stretch. But I feel like, and I don't know if turning him heel would work or not. I just feel like he is so sanitized in that WWE. And I feel like he was like that in AEW too. It's not just a WWE thing for me, at least. That's been my perception of him since he left WWE. What, 10 years ago when he was wrestling Stardust, and then kind of that whole incarnation of him. And again, I don't dislike him, but to me, he's not someone that I'm like, go Cody. Now, if he were wrestling Drew, I might maybe pull for him, but I just feel like the character needs work, in my perception. But again, the kids love him, and that's who they're targeting. They're not targeting 53-year-old men anymore. So, I could go either way on Cody at this point. Again, he's not someone that makes me like, this is must watch, can't miss championship material. Um, but speaking of Ted DiBiase Jr., obviously the acquittal last week, he's done what he needed to do. Could you see him getting back involved in wrestling? And specifically, it seems as almost as if it's serendipitous with this main event of night one of Cody versus Randy. What was it? The WrestleMania we were at, was that the one in Phoenix where it was
26.
triple threat?
Yeah.
I think with those three individuals. So could you see that happening? I guess at this point he's been acquitted, so it's not quote unquote controversial. And Jesus, look at Brock Lesnar coming back. I don't think there's any restrictions in that regard. Would the fans buy into it? I don't know. But again, he was acquitted, so he was found not guilty. And I know public perception is different from time to time with different people, but could you see that happening? Ted Jr. coming in, maybe not even at WrestleMania, but at some point, would he make a return to the ring?
I mean, I wouldn't bring him in at Mania if he does come back. How many, if he walked, let's say he does come back at Mania and the match is going on, his music hits, of the 50,000 people there, how many people are going to say, oh my gosh, it's Ted DiBiase? And how many people are going to be like, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I don't think DB, because I don't think he, I mean, in Legacy, he could have been obviously the third man, but could have been the fourth man behind Manure or whatever the guy was that didn't last very long.
Yeah.
And then what has he done besides allegedly embezzle money since leaving WWE?
13 years ago. Yeah, he's been gone 13 years. So that's
13 years. Yeah, like that's a whole generation of fans that have no idea who he is. It's not like you're bringing back Hulk Hogan or the Outsiders, or even bringing back the Bushwhackers. It's
yeah.
I mean, if he wants to come back, fine, and I'm sure they can use him, but I wouldn't bring him back as a major angle somebody that you're building a major angle around.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes
Mm.
sense. That's fair. So let's transition into this week's topic. We've been talking WrestleMania.
Mm.
We are what, 2 weeks away, I believe, as we are recording this. Um, the build has been kind of there. I know that there have been injuries and other factors going into it. There's still, 2 Raws and 2 SmackDowns before we get there. So we'll see
Yeah.
how things pan out and shape up as we continue to march down that road. But I wanted to talk about, Shawn Michaels. We'll start off with him. And I don't know, I don't remember when it happened or how it happened. I don't know if it was during his first run or after he had
Mm.
left and came back. But somewhere along the way, he gets the moniker of Mr. WrestleMania, which you would think as Mr. WrestleMania, that would be someone who has been successful and won more than they've lost and had big matches and whatnot. But
Mm.
Shawn Michaels' WrestleMania record, if I am remembering correctly, is 6-11, which I believe someone posted is the same record as The Miz at WrestleMania. So I don't remember if it's 6-11 or 11. Anyway, it's not a a totally flawless record. You're going to Google it. Thank
Yeah.
you. My point being, Sean is though one of those guys that has spanned across
Mm.
multiple decades. Uh, Even as the Rockers, I feel like, especially in those later years of the Rockers, he was becoming that standout, that breakout star. Probably, arguably, the most successful tag team wrestler to transition into singles. I think that is probably pretty accurate. Um, but he's been out of the ring and not wrestled. It was 15 years ago. I'm sorry,
Mm.
16 years ago that we were there for his last match in 2010, alleged last match at WrestleMania
Mm.
26 um, against The Undertaker, which to me, The Undertaker has the streak and the longevity and probably the best association to WrestleMania. But I think the Mr. WrestleMania title, kind of like Mr. Money in the Bank or Mr. Monday Night, when you give that title to someone, the Undertaker's gimmick just doesn't fit that to me. And so,
Yeah.
because people have said, "Oh, well, Undertaker should be Mr. WrestleMania." I like it for Shawn. It's kind of a cocky, self-centered, braggadocious title, I feel like, and it fits Shawn's personality. What say you on that kind of concept?
No, I think it definitely fits his persona, and I think he does have a 6-11 record. Um, I think what made it, and I'm with you. I don't remember when the term actually started being used. I'm going
Mhm.
to guess sometime probably. I mean, I want to say it was before his 4 or 5 year hiatus,
Uh-huh.
but if you look at that, he's only got really two outstanding matches, and that would be the ladder match at 10 and the Iron Man match at 12.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't wrestle at 13 and he's out after 14.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so that's why I would think the term would come back, after he came back into WWE in 2002. Um, but even then, I don't think he's got a lot of. Well, okay, yeah, no, I definitely going to say after that because then he does go on and has
Yeah. I mean, he wrestles Angle and Cena and
Cena and
so
Jericho, and he's in the three
yeah.
way with Benoit and Triple H. But so yeah, I'm going to say that the term comes in, and it's because again, not necessarily because of the record, but because of the matches themselves.
Yeah. So using that same kind of criteria, I wondered because I don't think the phrase has been coined yet of who is Ms. WrestleMania. Uh, we won't say Mrs. because we don't want her to be married to WrestleMania.
Mm.
Obviously over the last decade, and I think the decade is a fair thing to say, the women's division has gotten more shine and more opportunities, more women's matches at WrestleMania. I mean, we went for many years, WrestleManias 1 and 2 were women's matches. Kai and Wendy Richter at WrestleMania 1, and then Fabulous Moolah and Velvet McIntyre at WrestleMania 2. But then there's a dry spell there for a long time even though they still recognized a women's champion, when Sherry
Mm,
Martel, I don't think Sherry wrestled other than the mixed tag match at WrestleMania 6. And that's, by the way, the next time we get a women's match at WrestleMania. Uh, but it was, like I said, a mixed tag with Dusty and Sapphire against Sherry and Macho Man or Macho King. And then we don't get it again, I don't believe, until WrestleMania 10. So obviously there's a lot of gaps there. And again, some of them celebrity focused, some of them just the bra and panty pillow fight type matches. So 2016, we were at WrestleMania in Dallas, WrestleMania 32, and we get Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch in a triple threat match and it still recognizes the Divas Championship by then.
mm,
Um, but that is really where a lot of fans have cited the evolution or the revolution of women's wrestling. And the Attitude Era had some moments, and Sable and eventually Trish Stratus, Lita, which I think Lita's only had 2 WrestleMania matches, which blew my mind when I read that
mm,
fact. But again, that was in an era where if you weren't in the women's championship picture, you probably weren't going to get a match.
mm,
And I feel like like I said, the last several years, we've gotten maybe a grudge match, a lot, and we've added some women's championships into the mix with the tag team belts and now the US and Intercontinental Championships.
yeah.
So there are more opportunities, obviously. But saying all of this to say, who are some of the women you feel like could fit that Ms. WrestleMania moniker, or is it still too early because it really has only been about 10 solid years of women's wrestling at WrestleMania?
Yeah. This is where I wish I would have done some research before we started talking, so I wouldn't be talking out of my ass the entire time. Because I think just based on
I did some research, so I got your
okay,
back if you throw
okay,
out.
good. You can figure. I mean, I think just based on perception of where they stand in the hierarchy of the women's division, I think obviously you're going to go with Charlotte, Becky, or Bianca Belair.
Yeah, those were 3 of my top picks, and I had my mind already made up of who I
Mm,
was going to go with, but I threw it into Chat GPT just for shits and giggles, and it gave me, Charlotte was number one. It threw out Trish Stratus, Sasha Banks, Becky
mm,
Lynch, and and then I said, well, what about Bianca Belair? Because I do feel like Bianca's had a pretty good, solid WrestleMania history.
yeah,
Obviously since last year though, she's been injured, and
yeah. I mean, she was undefeated until last year. They could
yeah.
have, if they would have been wise, they could have built her up as the next Taker.
Well, and that here's the other caveat to that is, and I didn't realize this until I looked it up because I thought the same thing, but she was in that. There was apparently a women's battle royal in 2018, and I don't know, was that the year they were going to do the Moolah Battle Royal and then they changed the name?
That sounds.
She was representing NXT at the time, and she got
Uh,
eliminated from that. But there were a lot, and I didn't go back and look at the entire card, but there were a lot of. Becky Lynch was in that battle royal, and I think
mm,
Bailey and maybe Sasha were in that battle royal as well.
mm,
And I meant to go back and look at the entire card to see why it was like the way that it was. I guess that was the year that Charlotte wrestled Asuka. Asuka had won the Royal
mm,
Rumble that year. So anyway, but yeah, I think Charlotte Flair, she's wrestled Rhea Ripley a few times. She's not been in a WrestleMania match that has not involved a championship. This
yeah.
year may be the first, but I think they're kind of flirting with a women's title match for her and Alexa Bliss to be a part of.
Mm,
So that's not, as of this recording, that has not been announced, but this could be the first year that she's wrestled. She was injured
mm,
at 40 and she was injured, I think 37. One of the other WrestleManias she was injured at, so
mm,
she's not wrestled consistently. But that first match that we saw in Dallas with her and the other 2 members of the Four Horsewomen,
mm,
and then even I felt like her match that we saw at 39 with Rhea Ripley, both solid matches. Charlotte Flair obviously has the genetics, and we were talking earlier about parents and kids and wrestling.
mm,
I don't think she has, even though he would say that she has, because obviously that's what a proud
Mhm.
mom does. But I don't think she has outshone Nature Boy. Um, Obviously, the longevity is one factor, but Ric Flair is just a legend, despite some of the things he does now at age 77. But um, yeah, I feel like Charlotte Flair has kind of set the bar for women's wrestling, and
Yeah.
for the better. And I know that people criticize and call her, like they were doing with Becky Lynch earlier in the year, calling her Becky Hogan or whatever the case may be. Um, but that's where I feel like sometimes going away for a while, like Tony Storm we talked about. Charlotte did go away for a bit, and she has come back, and I'm not as high on her as I was in the early days, if that makes sense. And do you think that that fans can get that fatigue from their quote unquote favorites and kind of not necessarily wish them away, but wish that they weren't as dominant? Does that make sense even?
No, that makes sense. I think, I mean, I think we're seeing it with Cody right now. Um, I think fans have just, and again, I think we've talked about it before. It's funny how this is Cody's fourth WrestleMania main event in 4 years, and people are like, "Oh, it's too much," but it's also Roman Reigns' like 10th
Yeah.
WrestleMania main event in 12 years. It's like, where's, but then Roman goes away for 6 months and comes back. He's not there. So for some reason, people cheer him. But I do think, especially when you're, because on the flip side, that would be someone like The Miz, who's been around for 20 years,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, insane to think about that he's been there that long.
Right.
And, because I feel like I haven't even been watching wrestling for 20 years because I'm only, 22. So, um, but he's not pushed as the top guy. He's been, I mean, he was pushed, then dropped back down, and then briefly pushed again, dropped back down. And I think in that case, I think fans are kind of indifferent to him instead of being like, so maybe a better example would be Sheamus, where because Sheamus has been around, but he's also been gone and he hasn't been pushed, that hard. So yes, I think it all depends on how you're used and also how if the fans want you there or not.
Yeah.
And in a time when um with Charlotte and Becky, that fans got behind them and wanted them, but then the next crop of talent came along and people want to see, I would say the diehard wrestling fan, WWE fan, if you said, would you rather see going for the title at WrestleMania, would you rather see Charlotte, Becky, or Chelsea Green?
Mm.
That
Mm.
you would probably get a lot of people saying Chelsea Green right now,
Right. Yeah.
except for Michael Hayes.
Yes.
Um, and so I think that's where fan thing comes where, we said it before about fans not being happy when they don't get what they want, even if it's not what WWE or AEW is selling them. If they decide, hey, this is what we want, give it to us now. And if you
Right.
don't, we're gonna complain online about it.
Yeah. Because our I think that fan fatigue does become a real thing, especially
Mm,
when you look at, 3 hours of SmackDown, 2.5+ hours of Raw,
yeah.
uh, 2 hours of NXT, plus the extras, Saturday Night's Main Event, the PLEs. Collision is what? Is Collision an hour,
Two.
2 hours now?
It's
Uh,
two.
Dynamite is 2 hours. They do, 6-hour pay-per-views. Not,
That's
not as
just the pre-show.
Yeah. So, yeah, we get fan fatigue, but then also it's like when we were talking about the late 90s, early to mid 2000s in
Yeah.
the women's wrestling, Lita feels like a staple in the company for years
Mhm.
and only has two WrestleMania matches. Trish Stratus, um, one, two, three, four, five, six WrestleMania matches, and two of those came after she retired. So and you know, she's got the mixed tags and
Yeah,
the 6-woman tag that she did at the last WrestleMania that we were at, which I had kind of almost forgotten about that match. Um,
no recollection.
so it was her, Becky, and Lita against
Mm,
Bailey, Dakota Kai, and Io Sky. Damage
okay,
Control. I was trying to
okay.
remember what they called themselves. And then, of course, she was the tag team partner with Snooki in the infamous match back in 2011. So, um,
Classic.
do you remember her wrestling Christy Hemme at WrestleMania 21? Like, I don't remember that at all.
I
Um,
mean, I could tell you 3 matches that were happening at WrestleMania 21.
so, obviously, WrestleMania 22, that to me was a standout match with Mickey James for
Mm.
obvious
Several
reasons.
reasons. Yeah.
But,
I mean,
but
because we were there. That's the main reason.
it was our first WrestleMania, which we'll talk about that next week here on the show. But um, Sasha Banks, never been a fan. Bigger fan of her as a heel, but you know, and I know she has kind of left and reinvented herself as Mercedes Moné and on the independents and in AEW. Um, her record's not great. I think she's 1-6 at WrestleMania. So, but she's had those high profile matches. You know, she's in that triple threat match. She
Mm.
wrestled Bianca Belair for the first time that two black women main evented a night of WrestleMania. You know, Becky Lynch goes back. Charlotte and Ronda Rousey, that triple threat match where they were that was the first, you know, WrestleMania was still on one night. This was before
Mm.
COVID. Um, how big of a deal is that, do you think? How big of a deal was it? Did it matter to you that WrestleMania main evented final match of the night was a women's championship match? Did that bother you? Nah, bothers not the right word. Did it, you know, because
Yes, they should have been in the kitchen making me a sandwich.
I'm trying to remember and help me here, and
Yeah.
I you may throw it in your go. I'm trying to freelance here and remember for myself. I do know I believe the opener that year was Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar, and
Okay.
Seth won the championship back from Brock. There was
Yeah.
obviously another heavyweight championship match, but for the life of me, I'm drawing a blank. I cannot remember who competed
What's
in that match.
WrestleMania 30? Was that 34?
I think so. It would have been 2019. I don't know what the other men's championship match would have been that year.
Let's
Guessing.
see. Let's see. 30. I always think 35 is the COVID year, but it's actually 36.
Okay, so then 35 would be the 2019 match.
Yeah, I'm looking
That
right
was
now.
women's triple
And
threat. I know Samoa Joe wrestled Ray. I remember that.
oh yeah. Kofi defeated Daniel Bryan.
Oh,
That was Kofi Mania.
that's right. So, and not knocking anybody, but I do feel like that women's match, especially the buildup that they had given Becky at that time,
Mm,
she had gotten her face pretty much broken by Nia Jax.
yeah.
Um, and then they insert, I believe, didn't Ronda Rousey get inserted, or was Ronda the champ? I don't even remember the circumstances leading into this. Somebody got
I,
inserted into the
I
match.
think I thought Charlotte got.
Maybe it was Charlotte got in.
I mean, Rousey was the champion.
Okay,
And Charlotte was the SmackDown champion. So it was a winner
that's
takes
right.
all. That's where
That,
Becky Two Belts came in. Yeah.
that's right. Okay, so yeah, that was good story. You know, me forgetting, and I do when you said it, I remembered. Okay, Charlotte was. They did a grand entrance. I remember
Yeah.
specifically for Charlotte. She came in on the helicopter. You know, circa.
Recreating Rick's Starcade. Yeah.
I think it was Great American Bash.
Great American. Yeah. Yeah. Because it was
But
in the
yeah,
summer. Yeah.
um, so I think that there's obviously the talent is there, and we've seen it evolve through the years with the addition of these belts. I would argue, and this may be a controversial statement, I don't know. We don't need women's tag team champions. I feel like the division is strong enough to have singles competitors. I like that there's an Intercontinental and a US championship now. I'm not a big fan of I don't think we need two men's tag team championships.
Well, I was going to say that I don't think we need men's tag team champions at all. The way they've been
The
booked
way
in the
it's
last
looked,
decade.
yes. You know, we grew up in the 80s. You know, you
Mhm.
had Demolition and the British Bulldogs, Killer Bees, uh, Heart Foundation, you know, on the
Young
W.
Stallions. Yeah.
And then WCW, NWA, you know, with the Road Warriors and Telly and Arn, the Midnights, the Rock and Rolls, the Russians, tag team wrestling meant something, and it main evented closed shows. And when they did the splits and did the A and B towns, you were getting the tag team. You know, WrestleMania, what was it, 39, where we were at? You know, it's the only time other than the first WrestleMania that a main event was a tag team match, and it was the Usos against Owens and Zayn. And again, it's a makeshift team of Owens and Zayn. And right now, you know, look at the R-Truth and Damian Priest as tag team champions on one channel. The Usos once again are tag team champs for now. I still think that Logan Paul and Austin Theory are going to win before WrestleMania, but yeah, tag
I'm
team
still
wrestling.
saying Tom Brady and Gronk at Mania.
There you go. Yeah, that. Oh wow, I didn't think about that being a tag team match. But yeah, it is tag team wrestling just in general in WWE. I can't vouch much for AEW other than I know that the Young Bucks and FTR are still, and Edge and Cope. But
Same
yeah,
person.
tag team wrestling just doesn't feel like it's had, and AEW I guess has women's tag champions now too, but to me the women's division for tag team wrestling has always seemingly been these makeshift teams, Charlotte and Alexa Bliss. And you know, there's, other than like the Iconics or the Bellas, there hasn't been, like, to me, a like tag team that has been a part of that division. You know, they threw Chelsea Green and Shayna Baszler together. You know, they just don't make sense. And there's enough talent, I think, to do, and I guess you get more women into a match when you do a tag team match. So from that end, I get it, but I don't think that it's necessary. So do you think we'll see a time where we get WrestleMania balanced with men's and women's matches the same amount, or will we see women's matches ever exceed the number of men's matches on the show?
I would hope so, because my problem with this, and this is going to be, I guess, probably my pseudo misogynistic take, but
Mm,
it's a positive misogynistic take, and that is, I don't like looking at it and saying like, okay, there's three men's matches, we need three women's matches, or oh, there's only four and two. It's like, again, go back to storytelling, make the matches mean something. And
mhm.
if it happens to be you have more women's matches that deserve to be on the show, put them on there.
Yeah.
I have no, that's great, because I don't care who necessarily is involved in the match as long as I care about the match. And right now with WrestleMania, and granted, the injury bug has been, hard this year, and they've had to restructure a lot of things. But even if that wasn't the case, how many matches feel like WrestleMania matches this year?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. And you know, I've always kind of felt that way too with the Hall of Fame.
Mhm.
You know, they seem to have a formula, or they did for many years, where it was main eventer, tag team, manager slash announcer, woman, celebrity. And you know, you could argue, and I can't remember what year it was, but there was a year where I think two women went in, and it might have been the year that China was part. You know, and I do include China in that Hall of Fame, even though she's part of DX, she's still in the Hall of Fame, and I know a lot of
Yeah.
people want to see a solo induction, and that's a whole argument for another show. But um, I'm glad to see the women getting some recognition, getting their shine. And you know, we've talked about Cyndi Lauper for years as being that celebrity, you know,
Mhm.
that kind of, I think her involvement, and it made sense putting her with Wendy Richter. And I think that maybe there was a different plan to move the women's division at the time, but the talent just wasn't there. And then of course the original screw job of Spider Lady versus Wendy Richter in late 85 kind of put a bad taste in everyone's mouth for. And I think that year of solid, and I say solid loosely, but you know, Wendy Richter bringing some prominence to the women's wrestling division there was all kind of negated, and took a big step back then with Moolah, and nothing against Moolah, but she was probably in her 50s at the time. And, um, today's 50-year-old Trish Stratus is much different than 1980s 50-year-old Moolah. um, so, I do think it's an exciting time for the women's division in both companies. I've talked highly of Harley Cameron, and uh, we talked about Tony Storm earlier with the on the AEW side of the equation, and Ember, or she's not Ember Moon, Athena.
Athena.
Ring of Honor. I think she's been Ring of Honor women's champion for a long period of time now, and so women are getting that shot at it, and well deserved, and I'm excited about it. And looking ahead and looking forward, Rhea Ripley, I think the sky's the limit for her, and I think that some folks are getting fatigued with her because I don't think she's been in a WrestleMania match so far that hasn't involved a championship. But I like her a lot, and I do kind of wish she was still more on the heelish side, but I think that she is going to be a contender down the road for the Miz WrestleMania title as well. What are your thoughts on Rhea Ripley? Do you like what they've done with her, or what they're doing with her?
I mean, again, she's one that I would like to go back and watch the evolution of the character because, when she was in the early days of the Mae Young Classic and NXT, she was the blonde kind of upbeat person. Now, obviously, more goth or, whatever emo you want to call it. But I agree. I think she's one that the way that she's been booked is like, oh, she has to be at the top of the card.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think she could probably be utilized better to work with more mid card people to try to elevate them up into the top seat instead of just always being in the title match in the
Yeah.
top. And but I mean, nothing against her. I think she's in that position because she can back it up.
Yeah.
It's not like, and I'm just going to say this just because I know you'll pop for it, and but she's not there because like the Bella twins were just pushed there to be there,
Mhm. Yeah.
for whatever. Um, but I do think that in the next year, if it sustains, will the fans get tired of it?
Mhm.
I don't know.
And do you think that's what kind of dictates, because I don't necessarily think, and I'm just using her as the example, but I don't feel like she really changed anything. Her character changed. She stopped hanging out with Dominic. She got kind of screwed over by him, but like her style of wrestling hasn't changed. And so when we see the turn from good guy to bad guy, or heel to face, however you want to say it, um, you know, it's kind of like in that vein of Steve Austin. He didn't change anything. He was still cussing and flipping people off and
Mhm.
drinking beer and doing all this and that. Hogan obviously made a drastic change from the changing the red and yellow to the black and white, and going NWO Hollywood and embracing that. I feel like that's partly where the Cena heel turn failed, was that there wasn't a change. I think some characters need to make that transition and
Mhm.
completely embrace the 180. Tony Storm, we talked about
Yeah.
her transition and things, and I don't necessarily think that change is bad, but I think the Cena stuff was probably all kind of spur of the moment. Whereas if it were a long thought out process, would things be different? And I think
Yeah.
that um, with Rhea Ripley specifically, I feel like she's been one that, uh, even though she's different and she's not that cookie cutter diva type, I feel like WWE has had an influx of women like, uh, um, gosh, Lash. What's Lash's
Legend.
Lash Legend? I was going to say Lash LaRue, and that was somebody
He
in.
needs to make a comeback.
I was going to say that was somebody
He's
in
the raging Cajun.
the Raging, yes. But like, Lash Legend and Nia Jax and Jade Cargill, and Bianca, and there are women that, just like the men, it's not because we did go through a period, I think, even with the men, where it was kind of that cookie cutter black tights, tattoo, you know, buzz cut look, or the guys with the full grown, they've all kind of evolved and changed. And I like the diversity, I guess, in wrestling, both for the men and the women in 2026, that it's not this one size fits all, one person's vision. And do you think, speaking of the women's advancement, and I think maybe credit has been given to her, but do you think without a Stephanie McMahon in that higher ranking official office, back in the day of WWE, when she
Yep.
was still pretty high up in there, you know, you've got to have somebody, I think, behind the scenes advocating for you. And I think that was a whole movement of a division, and it wasn't just, we got rid of the brawn panty matches. Times have obviously changed a lot too. We went from that Jerry Springer, Howard Stern, 90s attitude to more of a athletic presentation for the women, and I think that has helped as well.
Yeah.
And you get the not the all cookie. I mentioned Nia Jax, Piper Niven, uh, women who are getting an opportunity that weren't, enhanced uh, on the surgeon's table. And not that there's anything wrong with that either, but I'm just saying it has been refreshing to see more of that diversity.
Yes. For the Stephanie McMahon question, I don't, is that something that actually happened with Stephanie, or was it something that she was giving credit for because she was in that position and she was female? And so
That's what I was getting at.
And I can't answer that because I don't know. I based on what I think I know, based on what I've read, I think obviously a lot of the credit goes to Fit Finlay because he was the one training the women, and and then bringing in Sarah Del Rey into NXT as female. When you
Still there,
have,
by the way.
as far as I know, yeah, yeah. Um, so when you have trainers that are actually training them to be wrestlers, and then obviously the wrestlers themselves have to be, hey, I want to be taken serious as a wrestler, not just eye candy.
Yeah.
Which goes back to Trish Stratus. You've heard, because when she came in, she was
Yes.
no, I don't think anyone expected her to be what Trish Stratus is today.
Right. She managed a tag team and was called TNA.
Yeah.
You know.
And Jeff Jarrett wasn't involved.
Albert, but come on.
Yeah. But she, I think she wanted to be taken serious as a wrestler and had that desire to be a serious wrestler.
Yes.
And so that, I think that's where the evolution comes into play of the overall. And I think, like you said, times have changed to where, I mean, yes, a bra and panties match, you're going to titillate the crowd a little bit, but overall, I don't think people want to see that, at least not in public when, they have to keep both hands above the the rail, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. So I, I just think unfortunately it took 30 years for women's wrestling to evolve into what it is in the mainstream. Using WrestleMania 1 as the starting point, but we're there, and I think it's a good thing, obviously. And again, it goes to what I was saying earlier. If the women can put on a better match and have a better story than the men's, then they deserve that spot.
Sure.
And it shouldn't be gatekeeping. It shouldn't be misogynistic reasoning. It should just be what is, as Vince always said, what's best for business, pal. Mm-hmm. And you do it.
So tomorrow night or Monday night, as people are listening and watching to this, they come out and say, we're going to declare blank as Ms. WrestleMania moving forward. Who gets that? Have we settled on that? I'm sticking with Charlotte Flair, but this year she's
right now,
not necessarily in that story, but I'm going with
I think right now you have to go Charlotte. Just
Yeah.
yeah, and then in 5 years, let's reevaluate and see. Uh,
And kind of on a closing note here, we've talked about the need to refresh and have different talent, in
mm,
that main event or in that title picture. And this year represents the first time since 2016, so in first time in 10 years, um, that the single women's championships don't involve any of the four horsewomen. So Sasha Banks, obviously, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, nor Bayley are involved in the women's championship matches. It's Rhea Ripley and Jade Cargill on one side, and the other side, and I don't know why. Oh, Liv Morgan and Stephanie Becker. So to me, that's almost a signal of that transitional time
to,
as well. That change that's happening.
mhm.
So, and I don't think
Yeah,
that's a bad thing. I don't think that it's a bad thing at all.
no, I mean, you know, I will use Hulk Hogan and Roman Reigns
Hmm.
again. You know, Hulk Hogan main evented 7 of the first 8 WrestleManias, and
Hmm.
then snuck his way into main eventing WrestleMania 9.
Yeah.
Roman Reigns, like we said, main eventing 10 WrestleMania. Like to me, that's too much.
Hmm.
And as a fan, I'm just but I mean, other than the fact that also I've never outside of WrestleMania 1, I was never a Hulkamaniac. I've never acknowledged Roman as my tribal chief. So those matches I don't care about to begin with. But it's when you go that long, when you go an entire decade basically of pushing the same person, you're going to get the fatigue. So, and I think it's smart for WWE to, I think Charlotte's going to stick around hopefully for at least another 5 years.
Hmm.
So Bayley, I think will still be wrestling. I don't know if it will be in WWE.
Yeah.
And Becky, kind of the same thing, where it's like, you know, how much longer is she going to be wrestling? And again, hopefully, when the time comes, it's all their decisions to step away,
Sure.
not
Yeah.
something else. But you have to have, you can't wait until you have to replace them to
Right.
replace them.
Yeah.
So, and I think, and again, it's fresh talent, it's new. I'm not a fan. I still don't think Jade Cargill should be in that position, just because I don't. Other than the look, I don't think she's. I'm curious to see how the match goes
Hmm.
with Rhea and how long it goes,
Yeah.
and um, hopefully they'll prove me wrong. But yes, I had another point that I was going to make with the women, and I've completely lost it. So I'll shut up.
All good. Well, friends, we want to hear from you. Who do you think should be the first Ms. WrestleMania? Let us know. We're not talking Santina Morella from WrestleMania
Read
20.
my mind.
So we want to hear from you though, and vote in WrestleMania My 123 Cents Madness. We're looking at WrestleMania celebrities. You can do that in the My 123 Cents Facebook group or over on the My 123 Cents Facebook page. Thanks for listening and or watching. We will see you next time.